AITA for removing my card after my wife's family left me out of the family photos? I'm Richard, 41. I'd been married to Brooke for 9 years when this happened, and we have a 7-year-old daughter, Maya. By that point, I had been in Brooke's family long enough to understand how they worked. There was what Sylvia, my mother-in-law, said out loud, and then there was what everyone was expected to understand without saying anything. Chelsea, Brooke's younger sister, was the center of gravity. If Chelsea had a bad week, the family rearranged dinner. If Chelsea needed help moving, somebody found a truck. If Chelsea changed her mind about something, everyone acted like the original plan had been unreasonable. Brooke was different. Brooke was the daughter who was expected to be responsible. She remembered birthdays, brought extra food, handled logistics, called her parents back, and fixed awkward situations before anyone else had to deal with them. And still, somehow, Sylvia could make her feel like she was failing. I saw it almost every holiday. We would be getting ready to leave the house, and Brooke would be tense before we even got into the car. Do you think the pie looks okay? It looks like a pie. That's not what I asked. It looks good. Mom said last year mine was too sweet. Your mother says things. Brooke would give me a look that meant please do not start. Then Maya would come running down the hallway with one shoe on, asking where her plastic dinosaur was, and I would realize I had somehow become the most relaxed person in the house. I used to think the way to help Brooke was to make things easier with her family. So I paid for dinners sometimes. I helped Gerald, Brooke's dad, replace part of a fence after a storm. When Chelsea needed a security deposit after moving out of an apartment with a roommate, Brooke and I covered some of it. When Sylvia had what she called a temporary cash flow issue around the holidays, I transferred money to Brooke and let Brooke handle it. None of those things ruined us. That was part of the problem. Because once people see that helping you doesn't hurt someone, they can start treating help like a utility. Sylvia had a phrase she liked to use with me. You're generous when it matters. The first few times, I took it as a compliment. Eventually, I realized it was usually followed by an expense. Chelsea got engaged to Brian about a year before the wedding. Brian seemed decent enough. I wasn't close with him, but he was easy to talk to, and he never acted entitled to anything from me. The engagement dinner was loud and emotional. Sylvia cried. Gerald hugged Brian. Chelsea showed the ring to everyone at least 3 times. Brooke was genuinely happy for her sister. I was too. The first money conversation happened 2 weeks later at Sylvia and Gerald's house. Chelsea had been talking about venues. Sylvia was scrolling through pictures on her phone, showing us long tables, chandeliers, and floral arches, all of it. Then she sighed. Weddings are just outrageous now. Gerald grunted like the wedding industry had personally betrayed him. Chelsea said, we're trying to be realistic. I asked, what does realistic mean? Chelsea named a number. It was not realistic. I didn't laugh, but I must have made some kind of face because Sylvia immediately said, well, everyone will help. I looked at Brooke. Brooke looked at me. Then Sylvia smiled. You're generous when it matters, Richard. There it was. I said, we can talk about a gift. Sylvia said, of course. That's all I mean. It was not all she meant. Brooke and I talked at home that night. Maya was asleep. There was a pile of laundry on the couch that neither of us wanted to fold. Brooke said, I know what you're thinking. What am I thinking? That my mom is already counting your money. Our money. She nodded. That distinction mattered to me. We had a joint checking account for household expenses and a separate joint savings account for family reserves. We also kept individual accounts for personal spending. It wasn't a complicated system, but it worked. The savings account wasn't just a pile of money. It had a purpose. Home repairs, medical bills, Maya's dental work, summer activities. Whatever happened that life didn't schedule politely. I said, I'm willing to help Chelsea. I'm not willing to finance the wedding. Brooke sat down across from me. How much? I thought about it. $12,000. $12,000? As a wedding gift. Total. Not $12,000 now, and then another $5,000 later. She was quiet. I continued, no emergency fund, no moving money around, no open card. We give $12,000 and they plan around $12,000. Brooke said, okay. I said, I mean it. I know. A gift has a number. An open wallet doesn't. She gave me a tired smile. I'll tell Mom. I should have paid more attention to the way she said that. Not, we'll tell Mom. I'll tell Mom. Like she was preparing for negotiations. We gave the first portion of the $12,000 toward the venue deposit. For a while, that seemed to be the end of it. Then Chelsea changed venues. The first place was too plain. The second place had better lighting, more space, and an outdoor ceremony option. It also cost more. Brooke told me the difference had been covered by Sylvia and Gerald. Then Chelsea wanted a live band instead of a DJ. Then the florist estimate grew because, according to Sylvia, the original arrangements looked thin. Then there was an open bar upgrade. Then the photographer package changed. None of those things were individually my problem. Except they started becoming my problem in pieces. A catering charge appeared on my credit card one afternoon. It wasn't huge. A few $100s. I texted Brooke. Did you put something for the wedding on my card? She replied almost immediately. I think that's a temporary hold. I'll check. That night, she told me the planner had used the card for a tasting reservation because the original payment hadn't gone through. I said, why did the planner have my card? She had it from the venue deposit. I didn't give permission to keep it on file. I know. I told her. Did you? Yes. I believed her. That's embarrassing to admit now, but I did. About a month later, an email came into the address Brooke and I used for shared bills, school notices, and anything that affected the household. The subject line said, remaining balance and card on file. It was from the wedding planner. I opened it while standing at the kitchen counter. The email referenced several final payments and said the card on file would be used if alternate payment was not received by certain deadlines. I read it twice. Brooke walked in carrying grocery bags. I turned my phone toward her. What is this? She glanced at it. That's probably just a draft. A draft that mentions my card. The planner sends automated stuff. Why is my card on file? I thought we talked about this. We talked about a temporary hold, not a backup payment method. She set the bags down harder than necessary. I'll email her. Please do. She didn't show me the email. I didn't ask to see it. That was mistake number 100 and something in a marriage where I had become too comfortable accepting I handled it as proof something was handled. Around that same time, Maya asked me about swimming lessons. We were at breakfast on a Saturday. She was eating cereal and picking the marshmallows out before the rest. Dad, why am I not doing swim this summer? I looked at Brooke. Brooke kept buttering toast. I said, what do you mean? Mom said maybe not this year. I asked Brooke why. She said, we were talking about cutting a few things. I don't remember talking about that. It was just a thought. Maya looked between us. I didn't want to have a money discussion in front of her, so I said, we'll figure it out. Later I asked Brooke what she meant. She said expenses had been high and she wanted to be careful. I said, that's fine. But we don't need to cut Maya's lessons because your sister upgraded her flowers. Brooke looked offended. That's not what's happening. Then what is happening? Nothing. I was just looking ahead. I let it go. That one still bothers me because Maya noticed the consequences before I did. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding. It was at a private room in a restaurant, the kind of place where the servers kept replacing water glasses before you noticed they were empty. There was a seating chart at the entrance. Name cards. Small floral arrangements on the tables. The photographer was there to take candid shots and test lighting for the next day. I had already spent the week feeling like a sponsor. Chelsea had joked about it 3 days earlier. We were all standing around after the rehearsal while someone was trying to locate a missing box of table numbers. Chelsea laughed and said, Richard basically counts as a sponsor now. I said, do I get my logo on the dance floor? Brian laughed. Chelsea did too, but Sylvia cut in with, don't be tacky. It was somehow tacky for me to joke about paying, but not tacky for them to joke about me paying. At dinner, there were speeches. Brian's dad spoke first. It was warm and brief. Gerald said a few words about welcoming Brian. Then Sylvia stood up. She was holding a glass of champagne. She thanked the planner, the bridal party, Brian's parents, and several relatives. Then she looked at me. And of course, Richard, she said. The man paying so our real family can celebrate properly. A few people laughed. Not huge laughter. More like uncertain social laughter. The kind where people aren't sure whether something is a joke, but don't want to be the only person who fails to react. I looked at Brooke. She stared at her plate. Sylvia continued talking like nothing had happened. I could feel heat climbing up my neck. Not because she mentioned money. I knew I had contributed. It was our real family. That phrase landed exactly the way she intended it to. A few minutes later, the photographer came over and asked if the bride's immediate family could step outside for a few photos while there was still light. I stood with Brooke. Sylvia pointed at me. No. Let's keep this one to blood and immediate family. The photographer hesitated. Brooke froze. I said, I'm her husband. Sylvia gave a small laugh. You know what I mean. Actually, I did. That was the problem. Brooke still didn't say anything. She didn't tell her mother I was immediate family. She didn't refuse to go. She didn't even look at me. She just said quietly, Richard, please. I don't know what she wanted me to do with that. Smile? Sit back down. Pretend I had misunderstood? I raised my glass toward Sylvia. Enjoy the celebration. Then I set it down and walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't announce that I was canceling anything. I didn't make a speech. I left. Brooke came outside about 3 minutes later. I was standing near my car. She said, What are you doing? Going home. Richard, come back inside. No. You're making this worse. I turned and looked at her. Worse for who? She shouldn't have said that. That's your response. What do you want me to do right now? I wanted you to do something in there. She's stressed. So am I. It's Chelsea's wedding weekend. I'm aware. Apparently, I financed enough of it to qualify for a toast. Brooke crossed her arms. I knew you were going to make this about money. I didn't bring up money. Your mother did. She made a stupid joke. And then she told the photographer I wasn't family. She said blood family. She said immediate family too. Brooke looked away. That hurt more than Sylvia. I said, Come home when you're ready. Then I left. I wish I could tell you I went home and immediately understood the whole situation. I didn't. At first, I was just angry. I walked into the house, kicked off my shoes, and one of Maya's tiny plastic animals fell out of the left one. A little yellow giraffe. She had put it there earlier that week, and I had forgotten. I picked it up. Then I stood there holding that ridiculous little giraffe and thinking about the word family. I went to the kitchen. I opened my laptop. I logged into my credit card. That was when anger became something else. There were multiple pending charges. Florist. Venue. A catering company. One of them was large enough that I stopped breathing normally for a second. I opened the shared email account. I searched the wedding planner's name. Then Chelsea's. Then the venue. There were messages I had never seen. Not because they had been deleted, but because Brooke had archived them. Some were addressed to both of us. Some only to Brooke. One said, As discussed, Richard's card will remain the backup payment method for final vendor balances. Another referenced a replacement payment that had not yet been received. Another said the photographer extension and bar upgrade would be secured, using the card already authorized. Already authorized. By whom? I logged into our joint savings. There was a transfer for $9,400. The memo said family emergency. I stared at it. I knew there hadn't been a family emergency. No hospital. No home repair. No legal problem. Nothing. The transfer had gone to Sylvia. I checked the date. 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks earlier, Brooke had told me we should consider cutting Maya's swim lessons because expenses were high. I called Brooke. She didn't answer. I called again. She answered on the 4th ring. What? Did you transfer $9,400 to your mother? Silence. Brooke. I can explain. Did you? Yes. For the wedding? Another pause. Yes. I sat down. What was it for? Some final things. What things? Richard. What things? The bar package. Flowers. They needed to extend the photographer. Some of it was timing. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. You labeled it family emergency. I knew you would say no. So you lied. I was going to put it back. With what? I don't know yet. Did you tell the planner my card could stay on file? I told her it could be backup. I closed my eyes. You told me you told her to remove it. I thought once it was over, we could fix it. Fix what? Everything. No. Be specific. Fix what? She sounded like she was crying now. I was trying to keep peace. You bought peace with our money. My mom would never have let it go if Chelsea had to cut things because of me. Because of you? She kept saying everyone was counting on us. Us or me. That's not fair. No, Brooke. What's not fair is taking money from our savings, lying about it, and giving someone permission to use my card. I knew you could cover it. That sentence changed something in me. Not because it was cruel. Because it was honest. She knew I could cover it. So in her mind, the question had stopped being whether it was right. The question was whether we would survive it financially. I said, I'm locking the card. Richard, no. Yes. The wedding is tomorrow. I know. You can't do this tonight. I'm not canceling the wedding. I'm canceling access to my card. They're going to lose things. Then they can pay for them. Please don't do this because you're angry about a picture. I said, this is not about a picture anymore. Then I hung up. I called the card company and locked the card. I reported it compromised because, as far as I was concerned, a payment method had been authorized without my consent for charges I had not approved. I requested a replacement. Then I started calling vendors. Most of them had after-hours numbers or voicemail systems. I left messages with the venue, florist, photographer, caterer, and the planner. I also emailed each one. I was careful with what I said. I didn't accuse them of fraud. I said I had approved a specific contribution toward the wedding, but had not approved my card as an ongoing or backup payment method, and I was withdrawing authorization for any future charges. I also made one thing clear. I was not asking for the original $12,000 back. I had agreed to that gift. It was already spent. I was not going to rewrite history just because I was furious. Everything beyond that was different. Then I looked at the remaining money in our joint savings. I didn't empty it into a secret personal account. I moved the available balance into a joint account we already had that required both of us to approve large outbound transfers. It was something we had opened years earlier for a home project and barely used. I did it because I no longer trusted that another family emergency would not happen overnight. Brooke came home after midnight. She walked in quietly. I was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted. Did you really freeze the card? Yes. Mom is losing her mind. That makes two of us. Chelsea's crying. I'm sorry she's upset. You don't sound sorry. I'm sorry she was promised money that was not hers. Brooke dropped into the chair across from me. You're punishing everyone. I turned the laptop toward her. On the screen was the email that said my card would remain the backup payment method. Did you authorize that? She looked at it. Yes. I clicked to the bank statement. Did you send this? Yes. Did you know it was for the wedding when you labeled it emergency? Yes. I clicked to another email. Did you tell me this was a draft? Her face tightened. Yes. I leaned back. That's 3 separate lies. I know. No. You know now because I found them. She started crying. Not loudly. She covered her face. I just wanted one event where my mom was proud of me. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I asked, proud of you for what? For making it work. By using me? I didn't think of it like that. That's the problem. She always acts like Chelsea is the one who gets everything right. I thought if this went perfectly, just once, maybe she would stop treating me like I was the difficult one. And what happens after the wedding? She looked at me. What? What were you going to buy next? That's not fair. Approval seems expensive. She wiped her face. I know it was wrong. I just didn't know how to stop it once it started. That was the first thing she said all night that I believed completely. And somehow that made it worse. The next morning, my phone started ringing before 8 a.m. First the planner. Then the venue. Then Sylvia. Then the florist. Then Sylvia again. Then Chelsea. Then Gerald. I spoke to the planner first. She was professional but clearly stressed. She said the card had been provided as the backup method by Brooke and Sylvia. I said, I did not authorize that. She said she understood and would remove it. I asked what remaining balances were still outstanding. She gave me a list. It was a lot. Some of it was due that day. Some could be reduced if packages were downgraded. Some deposits were already non-refundable. I repeated that I was not disputing charges I had knowingly paid as part of my $12,000 gift. I only wanted my card removed for anything else. She said, understood. The venue called next. Same conversation. They removed the card. Then Sylvia called again. I answered. She didn't say hello. What have you done? I removed my card. You have humiliated this family. I almost admired the speed with which she made herself the victim. I said, you told me I wasn't part of it. Do not punish a bride because your feelings were hurt. I'm not punishing Chelsea. The bar is being downgraded. Then someone who ordered the upgrade should pay for it. You agreed to help. I agreed to $12,000. You knew this wedding cost more than that. Yes. So you knew we were counting on you. No. You counted on me without asking. She lowered her voice into that controlled tone she used when she wanted to make someone feel childish. Men who join a family should learn how to support one. I said, interesting timing on the word family. She went quiet. I continued, you didn't want me in the family picture. You wanted me in the payment line. That is unbelievably petty. Then it should be easy to pay without me. She hung up. Gerald called about 10 minutes later. He was less dramatic. Richard, this is getting out of hand. I agree. You need to put the card back until tomorrow. No. Deal with Brooke after the wedding. I am dealing with my card now. He sighed. Sometimes a man has to carry extra weight when the women are under pressure. I said, Gerald, did you know Brooke transferred Sylvia $9,400 from our savings? Silence. Then, that's between you and your wife. Exactly. He didn't have much to say after that. Brian called around 9:30. His voice sounded different from everybody else's. Not angry exactly. Confused. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you actually agree to pay the final balance on the wedding? No. What did you agree to? $12,000 total. He was quiet. That's it. That's it. I was told you were covering most of the venue and the upgrades. By who? He sighed. You already know. Sylvia? And Chelsea, but Chelsea says she got it from Sylvia. I rubbed my forehead. Brian, I'm not trying to blow up your wedding. It feels like someone is. I'm not asking for the $12,000 back. I'm not canceling contracts. I'm removing my card from expenses I did not approve. Why was your card on file? Ask Brooke and Sylvia. He swore under his breath. Then he said, I didn't know that. I believe you. I have to go. A few hours later, Sylvia sent a group text. Family meeting. Noon. Gerald in my house. We need to fix this before guests arrive. I almost ignored it. Then Janelle, one of Brooke's cousins, texted me separately. I don't know what's going on, but your mother-in-law is telling everyone you pulled all the wedding money because you got left out of one picture. That was when I decided to go. Not because I needed everyone to agree with me. Because Sylvia was already rewriting the story. If she wanted an audience, I was going to bring documents. Brooke rode with me. We barely spoke. She asked, are you really going to show them the transfer? If your mother lies about why I froze the card, yes. She'll hate me. I looked at her. She already got you to lie to me. That's not the same. It is to our marriage. Brooke turned toward the window. The meeting was at Sylvia and Gerald's house. Chelsea was there in sweatpants with her hair half done because she had to leave later for the venue. Brian was beside her. Gerald stood near the kitchen. Janelle was there, along with another aunt who had apparently been pulled into the drama. Sylvia had papers spread out on the dining table like she was running a crisis committee. The moment I walked in, she said, good. Put the card back and we can all move on. I set a folder on the table. No. Chelsea snapped. Then why are you here? To make sure everyone understands what actually happened. She had clearly been crying. You waited until my wedding day to do this. I found out last night. You knew you were paying. I knew I was giving you $12,000. Chelsea looked at Sylvia, then back at me. That's not what Mom said. I know. Sylvia cut in. This is not the time. I pulled out the first page. It was a printout of the original transfer Brooke and I had made toward the venue, along with a text thread where I had said clearly that $12,000 was the total gift. I put it on the table. That is what I agreed to. Sylvia said, people adjust wedding budgets. Then they asked the people paying. You were included in the conversations. No. I was informed after decisions. Chelsea said, you told Brooke yes. I looked at Brooke. She looked sick. I asked, did I? Brooke whispered, not exactly. Sylvia jumped in. Brooke, don't do this. Brian looked at her. Do what? I put down the email about the card on file. This says my card was authorized as backup for final vendor balances. Brian picked it up. He read it. Then he asked Brooke, did Richard know? Brooke didn't answer. I said no. Sylvia said, it was backup. No one planned to use it unless necessary. I said, there are pending charges on it. She waved a hand. Temporary. I pulled out the bank statement. And this. That changed the room. Not dramatically. Nobody gasped. But people stopped talking over one another. Brian leaned forward. Chelsea looked at the number. Janelle asked, what is that? I said, $9,400 transferred from our joint savings to Sylvia 3 weeks ago. Chelsea looked at her mother. For what? Sylvia said, wedding expenses. I tapped the memo. It was labeled family emergency. Janelle looked at Brooke. Was there an emergency? Brooke shook her head. No. Sylvia said, that was simply how the transfer was categorized. I asked why. No answer. Chelsea looked angry now, but not just at me. She said, you told me Richard had approved the bar. Sylvia said, Brooke handled that. Brooke looked up. I did not tell Chelsea that. Sylvia's face changed. It was small, but I saw it. The first crack. Brian asked, who told the planner to keep Richard's card? Brooke said, I did. Sylvia immediately added, because we needed security on the account. Brian stared at her. Security using someone else's card? Sylvia said, don't be dramatic. That was when Janelle asked the question that ended the argument better than anything I had prepared. She looked at Brooke and said, did he agree to any of this after the first gift? Brooke swallowed. No. Sylvia said, Brooke. Brooke shook her head. No, he didn't. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Chelsea turned on Brooke. So everyone lied to me, and I'm supposed to be calm? Brooke said, I didn't lie to you about everything. That's not a defense. Sylvia told Chelsea, this is not your problem today. Chelsea snapped, it's literally my wedding. Brian said, and apparently part of it was being charged to Richard without him knowing. Sylvia looked at me. You've made your point. No, I said, I'm making it now. I kept my voice calm. The $12,000 stays. I gave it. I'm not taking it back. Everything else stops. Sylvia scoffed. You want applause for not stealing back your own gift? I don't want applause. I looked at Brooke. The $9,400 has to go back into our savings. Brooke nodded. Okay. We separate finances for now. Her face fell. Richard. For now. Sylvia said, you're threatening your marriage over money. I looked at her. No, I'm protecting my marriage from money being used behind my back. Brooke started crying again. I kept going because if I stopped, I knew I would soften before anything was actually fixed. No more money from us to your parents, Chelsea, or anyone else unless we both agree in advance. Brooke nodded. And counseling. She nodded again. Sylvia said, this is insane. I finally turned to her. You are not part of that decision. That was the first time in 9 years I had said something to Sylvia without caring whether it made the next holiday uncomfortable. She looked at me like I had changed the rules. I had. Chelsea crossed her arms. So that's it. I just lose half my wedding because you want to make some point. No. You lose upgrades that were built on money nobody had permission to use. You waited until now because you wanted maximum damage. I found out last night. You could have waited until tomorrow. and let thousands more hit my card? She didn't answer. I said, I'm not canceling your wedding. I'm canceling your permission to use me. Chelsea looked away. Brian said quietly, we need to go talk to the planner. That ended the meeting. Not cleanly. Sylvia kept arguing. Gerald asked me twice if I was sure. The aunt who had barely spoken said she didn't think finances should have been hidden. Janelle told Sylvia to stop calling it one picture because that was obviously not the whole issue. But the important part was over. The card stayed frozen. The wedding still happened. That is important because several people later told the story as though I had canceled the ceremony, locked the church doors, and set fire to the cake. I did not. Chelsea and Brian got married. The venue remained. The catering remained, though some options were cut. The open bar was downgraded. The live band was replaced with the DJ option the venue already worked with. The floral upgrade was canceled. The photographer stayed for fewer hours. Some late-night food add-on disappeared. I don't know every detail. I didn't ask. Brooke went to the wedding. I went too, mostly because Maya was a flower girl and I was not going to drag her into a fight she didn't understand. I stayed polite. I didn't discuss money with guests. I didn't make comments during speeches. I sat where I was assigned. When it was time for the blood family photos, I didn't move. Nobody had to tell me. Brooke stood with Sylvia, Gerald, Chelsea, and the rest of them. I watched from across the room. This time it didn't feel like an insult. It felt like information. Brian's family found out some version of what happened, though I never told them directly. I knew because Brian's father spoke to me briefly near the bar. He said, sounds like there was a misunderstanding about some payments. I said, that's one word for it. He nodded. Then he said, I'm sorry you got put in that position. That was all. No dramatic alliance. No public confrontation. Just one adult acknowledging something had gone wrong. Chelsea barely spoke to me. Sylvia did not speak to me at all. Gerald gave me a strained handshake. Brooke was quiet most of the night. On the drive home, Maya fell asleep in the back seat holding one of the little wedding favors. Brooke stared out the window. After about 20 minutes, she said, I should have said something when Mom told the photographer you weren't family. Yes. I froze. I know. That doesn't make it okay. No. She cried silently for a while. I kept driving. Then she said, I'm sorry. I believe she meant it. I was not ready to forgive her. Those are not the same thing. The weeks after the wedding were worse than the wedding itself. Drama is easy when there is a deadline. Marriage is harder. Brooke transferred money back gradually. Some came from her personal savings. Some came from cutting her own discretionary spending. She sold a few things she didn't use. I didn't demand that she somehow produce $9,400 overnight. I demanded that she treat the debt to our family as real. We separated our finances. Our household bills still came from the joint account, but larger transfers required both of us. Our individual cards stayed individual. No one in Brooke's family had access to anything tied to me. We started counseling. The first few sessions were not satisfying. There was no magical moment where Brooke understood everything and changed. She spent a lot of time explaining Sylvia. The counselor kept redirecting her. Not because Sylvia didn't matter. Because Brooke had made choices. That distinction was painful for her. She had spent years describing herself as someone who couldn't say no to her mother. The counselor asked what actually happened when she did say no. Brooke said Sylvia got angry, cold, critical, dramatic. The counselor asked, and then? Brooke stared at her. And then she stays mad. That was it. No one died. No one lost a home. No one went to jail. Sylvia got mad. Brooke had been spending money, lying to me, and damaging our marriage to avoid her mother being angry. I could see the realization hit her slowly. One night after counseling, Brooke said, I think I kept treating Mom's disappointment like an emergency. I said, you literally labeled it one. She closed her eyes. I deserve that. I didn't say anything. About a month later, Sylvia called Brooke and asked for help with what she described as a family issue. Brooke put the phone on speaker without telling me she was going to. Sylvia said Gerald needed some unexpected dental work and insurance would not cover all of it. Brooke asked how much. Sylvia named a number. Then there was a pause. The old version of Brooke would have looked at me. or said, "Let me see what we can do." Instead, she said, "We're not able to contribute." Sylvia's tone changed immediately. "Brooke, I'm sorry. After everything we've done for you?" Brooke's face tightened. I did not speak. Sylvia continued, "I suppose Richard is sitting there enjoying this." Brooke said, "This is my answer, Mom." Then she hung up. Her hands were shaking afterward. I asked, "You okay?" "No." Then she laughed a little. "But I think I will be." That was the first moment after the wedding when I thought our marriage might survive. Not because she chose me over her mother. I didn't want to be another person she had to choose to keep calm. It was because she finally made a decision without purchasing anyone's approval. Chelsea stayed angry for a while. She blamed Sylvia more after Brian started asking questions about what had been promised and by whom. She blamed Brooke too. She blamed me most when she was talking to Sylvia. That was predictable. At one point she texted me, "I hope humiliating me was worth it." I replied, "I'm sorry you were promised money I never agreed to provide." She sent back, "You always have to sound so reasonable." I did not answer. Janelle checked in a few times. She admitted she had originally thought I was being dramatic. Then she said, "Your mother-in-law told people you volunteered to cover the wedding because you felt guilty for being distant from the family." That one surprised me. Guilty about what? She didn't say. Of course she didn't. It was useful because it explained why some relatives had looked at me strangely after the card was pulled. In Sylvia's version, I had not set a boundary. I had broken a promise made to repair my own bad behavior. I was both the wallet and the villain. I asked Janelle if she believed that. She said, "I did before I saw the bank transfer." That was fair. I had spent years making Sylvia's version of me plausible by quietly paying for things. If someone always covers the bill, people eventually stop asking whether he volunteered. They just assume he did. That was part of my mistake. I had confused avoiding conflict with building goodwill. The two are not the same. Maya got her swim lessons. That sounds like a small detail, but it mattered to me. The first day, she stood at the edge of the pool in goggles that were too tight and waved at me like she was crossing an ocean. Brooke sat beside me. Neither of us talked about Chelsea's wedding. We didn't need to. The money had gone back into the account by then. Not all of the trust had. Trust is slower. We changed a lot of practical things. No more vague family help. If money left our household for someone else, we both agreed first. No cards saved by relatives. No emergency transfer unless it was actually an emergency. No using our savings to keep someone from being disappointed. Brooke stopped managing all communication with Sylvia privately. Not because I needed to monitor her. Because secrecy had become part of the problem. If Sylvia asked for something that affected our family, Brooke told me. If Brooke wanted to say yes, we discussed it. If I wanted to say no, I explained why. And sometimes Brooke disagreed with me. That was actually healthier than the old system. Before, she had looked agreeable and then done something else because she was scared to disappoint everyone. Now at least I knew what conversation we were actually having. Sylvia never apologized to me. I did not expect her to. She still tells people I overreacted because of the photo incident. That is what she calls it. The photo incident. As though the $9,400, the backup card, the pending charges, and Brooke's lies were all footnotes to me being sensitive about a camera. Gerald eventually told me privately that he thought things got out of control on all sides. That is as close as he will ever come to saying Sylvia was wrong. Brian became more distant from Sylvia after the wedding. Not dramatically. Just fewer calls. Fewer favors. More questions. Chelsea and I are civil. She never apologized either. I don't think she fully understands why she should. From her point of view, she was told a wedding budget existed, made decisions based on it, and then watched parts of it disappear the day before the wedding. I understand why she was angry. I also think being 31 years old means you eventually have to ask where money comes from before you spend it. Both things can be true. As for Brooke, we stayed married. I did not decide that immediately. For a few months, I genuinely did not know. She had lied to me repeatedly. Not about something abstract. About money we had set aside for our daughter and our home. About permission tied to my name. About a transfer she deliberately mislabeled because she knew I would object. That is serious. Counseling helped, but not because it erased what happened. It gave us a place where Brooke could stop saying, "I was trying to keep peace," as though intention canceled impact. Eventually, she said something different. "I chose Mom's reaction over your trust." That mattered. Not because it was a perfect line, because it was accurate. I also had to admit my part. Not in the deception or the lying. Those were hers. But I had spent years watching Sylvia pressure Brooke and responding by paying for things because it was easier than helping Brooke face the conflict. I had helped create a pattern where money solved discomfort. Then I got angry when everyone expected money to solve a bigger discomfort. That didn't excuse what they did. It did explain why the boundary had to change completely. About 6 months after the wedding, Brooke found the small framed photo I had bought. It was not from the wedding. It was a picture of the three of us from a weekend earlier that year. Maya was in the middle, missing one front tooth. Brooke was laughing at something off camera. I looked tired. It was not a polished photo. I put it on a shelf in the living room. Brooke stood there looking at it. Then she looked at me. Is that supposed to make a point? Maybe. What point? I thought about the rehearsal dinner. About Sylvia's toast. About being told I was generous when it mattered. About the photographer waiting awkwardly while Sylvia decided who counted. About my name sitting on vendor accounts while I sat outside the frame. I said, nobody in that picture had to pay to be in it. Brooke looked down. Then she reached out and straightened the frame, even though it was already straight. We still have that photo. The wedding album never included me in the real family pictures. That used to bother me. Now it does not. I know exactly which family I was responsible for protecting, and it was never the one that only remembered I belonged when a balance was due. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.